Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Today we're going to do another quilting play-by-play where I show you how and why I made the decisions I did when I was quilting. This time I'm quilting our subscription club quilt for this month. Stash with Stephanie is a subscription club you can join where you get 10 fat quarters, a free pattern, plus first dibs on additional fabric with an exclusive discount. And you can learn more about that over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. We've got over 650 members. People love it. I mean, the hard part is one, figuring out what fabrics you want to go together, and two, what to do with them. And we give you ideas for both. So very fun things. And it's all brand new, just released modern fabrics. So check that out. And we've got a tutorial on how to put this quilt together as well. It's a lot easier than it looks because we strip piece the majority of it. Check that out. It's a video released just before this one. And this quilt is called Tree Star. So you can look for that tutorial. All right. So we always start these off talking about thread, and I picked a very boring thread color this time. I picked linen, which is color 10WG1 from Glide. That is in the 40 weight, the polyester. It's the one with a little bit of a sheen, and I picked it because I wanted an all over thread that I could use both in the background and in the main areas. And we've got lots of different colors here, so I wanted it to really just kind of blend in with everything, and that way I could do the entire pass all at one time without having to change threads, because you know, shipping delays are a real thing, and I had a little over 2 weeks from the day we received the fabric to when I had to have this quilted and done and ready to release as a pattern. And so that's a lot of pressure, and I had to quilt this in one evening. So I wanted to do something that would be custom because I really wanted to show off this diamond block. It's really big and really fun, and I want to do something different in the background, but I wanted something that would also be fast. So choosing one thread color helps it go faster. And then we're going to talk about these squiggly lines. They're just little wavy lines. We've done them before, usually just straight up and down. But this time I ended up going out to the point of the diamonds. So we're going to see how I did that as we look at the GoPro footage of me actually quilting this thing. One thing you should know is I loaded this quilt on sideways. So if we're looking up and down, this is up and down of the quilt, and this is side to side. So I loaded it. Normally you load a quilt from top down and you quilt that way, but the blocks worked really well for me to be able to go this way across. So I loaded it left to right instead of top to bottom, and that way I could quilt and just do this whole thing in 4 passes, because it's a very large lap. It's not quite a twin, but a very large lap. It looks really cool. I really love it. Okay, so let's get into the quilting play-by-play, and I can talk through the decisions I made, why I made them, and you can learn and do it at home. All right, so in the background, I did a swirl, and this is a really basic quilt stitch. You are just going to come into the center and then come back out. And you kind of want to stop just a little bit at that point because you do want it to be pointy. And so I just kind of pause just a teeny bit when I get in there. And what I like to do with my swirls is switch directions. So here I was going and coming in. Here I came in to the right. Now I'm going to switch and I'm going to come in from the left. And so if you switch directions and kind of randomize it like that, it looks a lot better. Now you can see my quilting is a tad bit wavy here. That's because I had my extension table on for my ruler base, and I wasn't able to keep my side clamps on, so I should have just taken it off before I did that, but you know, live and learn and do it better next time. But as you can see, I'm just filling in. First I made my way up the side, now I'm just kind of going back and forth from side to side, filling in. And whenever you're doing swirls, you really just want to think of your size. You want to keep them, if you just want it to be a normal background filler where it's not calling a lot of attention, you want them to be relatively uniform in size. There certainly are times when you want to really make a show of it, and then you can experiment with different size ones and have some fun with it. But in this case, I really wanted them all to be not uniform because I'm not a machine, but also, you know, not stealing the show. I wanted the blocks to be the star of the show in this quilt, so we're really just going pretty bland in the background. All right, so we're just going in and out, working our way around here, and now we're going to travel right between those stitches. And I just did one swirl in each one of these diamonds. You can see I kind of switched directions there, and I'm actually stopping here because that's all we need to show you for the swirl. All right, so now we're gonna work in the actual star block. So I'm gonna start by dropping my needle and pulling my bobbin threads to the top and just start in one of those points. And essentially what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna work from point to point, doing a wavy line. And that's a lot faster than ruler work. And so you're still able to get the results of ruler work, but you're not gonna do anywhere near as much of it. So I'm just doing a very wiggly line from point to point, and that's my goal. Now I did still use ruler work where I just traveled as close as I could to that seam. So it's not quite stitching the ditch because these seams are pressed open, but it's kind of stitching next to the ditch. So here you go, I'm doing a wiggle from point to point there. Now we're gonna travel to the next point, and in this one I'm gonna be able to go across two. Now, if I would have had more time, I would have outlined every single one of those, but we don't always have a ton of time when we're quilting, so this is a good way to kind of show you how that works. All right, so we went from point to point, and in this case, I was able to go through another point. All right, so now for this one, I didn't want to just have one. So you can see I was kind of giving you a heads up of where I was going. I'm going to travel down to the point of my big diamond, and it would just look not uniform if I didn't stitch, if I just did one stitch. So what I'm doing here is I'm aiming for the point of that purple diamond, which is about a quarter of the way through that big one, and then I'm going to continue on to the point of the smaller diamond. All right, so now we're going to travel, and we're going to get to the point of this one, and with this one we're going to be able to do a wiggly line from point to point of the smaller dark purple diamond, and then also go straight through to the center of that block. All right, so we hit that center, and I didn't hit every single point right on, but we were pretty close. And there really is no rhyme or reason to where the wiggles are. Now you can see here, I'm gonna start wiggling out to the point of the next diamond, which is about a quarter of the way through that big yellow one. And then you can just keep going through. All right, so I'm going to keep working my way across the block here, using my ruler whenever I need to travel, stitching as close to that ditch as I can. And this is why I really love pressing my seams open, because one, it makes really great points when I'm doing particular work like this, like with the those diamond points, but also I'm able to quilt right into them, which is not always the case when you are pressing your seams to the one side or another. It can get too bulky and it can cause problems with your machine. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna go ahead. I've almost finished one entire wedge, and so if you haven't watched the video tutorial for this, check that out, but I've almost got one wedge done here. All right, so now we're going to transfer over to the next block. So right here, I'm just gonna go, instead of traveling along the stitch line, we're just gonna go up to the top there, and we're gonna stitch down. And we're just gonna repeat. We're gonna keep doing this as we go. And eventually you can sometimes do two wedges at a time. So we'll see that in a little bit. But what we're gonna do is, this is just more of the same. So we're just gonna let you watch me quilt and how I work around. I've talked a lot about how path is very important when you're quilting, whether it's at your home machine or on the long arm. You wanna break thread as little as possible. So by doing it this way and working my way around and just traveling as close to that stitch as possible, you don't really see it in the final. Like you can see right here, I've got a stitch line, but you don't really see it. You just see the texture of the lines, which is really kind of fun. All right, so I'm just gonna let you watch this, and then I'll pop back in when we start doing two at a time, because that does work out sometimes to be able to do it that way. All right, here we go. I am now stitching two at a time. So we went down to the bottom there, and then we came right back up. And so this top diamond two, we're gonna do two at a time. We're gonna go from point to point, And now we're gonna go out to the point of that purple diamond, which is on the other wedge. Now, occasionally I was able to think ahead enough and be able to do 2 entire wedges at the same time. That is always fun when you can do that. All right, so at this point we're kind of stuck. We need to get to the next point. So I'm going to do quite a bit of traveling here. So we're gonna travel along one side, and then we're gonna travel along the other. And again, if you use a fine thread, that is gonna be your best bet. That's why I really like the glide. It really works great for stuff like this. All right, so now we're gonna travel out to our point, and now we can restart those wiggly lines again and start moving a little bit faster. So I just kind of have my ruler near me at all times. I just kind of keep it on the quilt while I'm working, and that way I can grab it when I need it, but it's not in the way. All right, so here we are. We're gonna travel back to the point, and we're just gonna keep working our way out through that wedge. All right, so I think we're at the last diamond, almost. We got one more diamond to go. But you can see I'm gonna work it so that way when I end, I'm ending at the tip of the diamond, which is gonna connect with my next block. That way I don't have to break any thread. I can just move on to the next one. All right, so here we go. We are gonna do 2 at a time here. So I came in one side, I'm gonna go out the other side for the wedge. Now I can work my way down. I can travel there by stitching next to that ditch, and now I can come in and out and go down one side and go up the other, and I'm going to do that as far as I can, so that way I can just sort of do as much with the wavy lines as possible, because you can see as we're doing this in real time, I'm not speeding along because I'm trying to be mindful and go through those points as much as possible, but I'm able to move a lot faster when I'm doing the wavy lines than I would if I were following ruler work, because I just have more freedom and a movement when you're doing that. All right, so now we're gonna travel again, and this is gonna be a big wavy line section because we're gonna be able to go through some big sections here. So we've got our little diamond, and now we're hitting at about 1/4 of the big diamond, so we're gonna aim for the point, the center of that block. Now we're going to come back out and try to hit the about 1/4, well, half actually, through the other section. Then we can travel again, and we can go straight down the center of all those diamonds. So you can see this is really kind of slick when you're able to do it. It doesn't always work out that you're able to do 2 at a time, but when it does, it's definitely worth it. So always, like when you're doing this, think about your path. Like I almost never film on like the first pass that I'm doing because I'm still figuring it out. I'm figuring out, okay, what's the best way to do this as efficiently as possible? And once I figured that out, that's when I turn on the camera. So your first pass, you are going to be doing some experimenting. Which path is going to be the most efficient, which is going to involve the least breakage, which is going to be able to get you great results but in the least amount of time, and that's kind of what you want to be experimenting with as you're going through the first time. All right, so at this point we're going to be heading back over to that first wedge, and we're going to be finishing up those smaller diamonds, and then we're going to travel all the way over and continue on with the wedge. All right, so we got a little travel here. Do a little bit more wavy line. And then we're gonna hit those last 2 diamonds and then travel all the way over. All right, so here's the travel. We've got quite a ways to go. We got to go all the way to the center of that block, and then we're able to continue on. So all in all, I really like this usage of a design. I think I'm going to definitely use it more because I really like the way that everything turned out. It looks custom, it looks really cool. It looks, one of my team members thought that it looked kind of like a sun with the rays going out. I thought it looked like leaf veins going out, which since it's called Tree Star, that really makes some sense. But it really just adds to it. It's really fun, but it was really fast. I think I quilted this whole thing in under 3 hours, which is really good to be able to do a really large, almost twin size lap in that amount of time, but still have it look like custom results. I mean, we all can whip one out with a really easy design, but it doesn't always look like you really took the time with it. So this one looks like you did take the time with it, but it actually goes super fast because we're only using that ruler work selectively. And again, if I would have had all the time in the world, I would have outlined every single one of those diamonds with ruler work and really spent a lot more time with this, but it looks really great even though I was able to do it very, very quickly. I did use the same thread in the bobbin as I did on the top. So we're just gonna flip it over so you can see kind of from the back. So here you can see this tree star coming out. So here's our center, and you can see all the wavy lines coming out. So it is actually pretty densely quilted. I would say everything is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches apart. And so that's really gonna hold everything in place really, really well. It looks pretty cool in the background. And you can see where I traveled. There are a few instances kind of mostly at the tips of things where you can see that we have a straight line instead of a wavy one, but it really looks great. I really love how this turned out. I think it looks fantastic, and really that boring thread choice was a great one because it just blends really nicely with everything. Essentially, this fabric has more of a cream brown taste to it, which is why I went with a creamy linen as opposed to my white or gray, but it really looks great. It really kind of just blends in with the color and just kind of fades and creates that texture that is really lovely. All right, well, that's it. You've seen me quilt 2 entire blocks. You've seen how I quilted the background, and essentially I did this in 2 passes. I did my entire background first with those swirls, just traveling in between the diamonds as I went, and then I switched it up and I just traveled going through all of these diamonds, just doing those wiggly lines, and when I needed to transfer over, I just popped over from one to another, and everything looked great. And I really love how this one turned out. It was super easy. I mean, a wavy line is super simple, right? I just wasn't, going at top speed because I wanted to make sure that I was hitting those diamonds because I took a lot of time piecing them. Well, not a lot of time. I took a lot of care when I was piecing them to make sure that they all ended up with all those points matching. So I wanted to highlight that. So I took time, but it still was a really efficient way of doing quilting, and I think it looks great. It looks like it has a custom work to it, and I really love the results. All right, so if you want to learn more about Stashing with Stephanie, again, it's our subscription club where you get 10 fat quarters for $29.99 a month plus shipping, and then you get a pattern that is inspired by that fabric. This is this month's pattern that you would get for free. You get access to other Stashing with Stephanie patterns that we have released, and you get first dibs on getting additional fabric. So 10 fat quarters is like never enough to make an entire quilt unless you're doing a very small one, but it is enough to get you a good chunk of the way there. So what we do is we offer what's called finishing kits to our subscribers, where they can get the fat quarters they're missing plus their background and binding. So if they really love that month's project, they can get what they need to turn their bundle into the full quilt kit. We also have quilt kits available while supplies last. If you're not a member of the club, or if you're signing up this month and you missed out on this fabric, you can grab that as well, because if you sign up now, your next bundle or your first bundle won't ship until July around the 20th. So you missed out on this one, but you can still get the kit if we still have them in stock. All right, so check that out. It's really a fun club, and we try to give you lots of really fun things. We're trying to schedule an interview with the designer. Not sure it's going to work out. She's leaving for Europe tomorrow, so that might not work out this time because I don't want to make her take time out from her European vacation to chat with us, because I was a little bit behind on scheduling things this month, so sorry about that. Crazy month. Maybe we'll chat with her when she gets back, and we can give you guys the inspiration behind this fabric. It just won't come at the end of the month like it normally does. All right, so check it out. The fabric is called Summer's End, and it is really beautiful. It's a great fall line, modern fall line, and the pattern is called Tree Star, and you can get that on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. We've got the fabric, we've got the pattern, we've got kits while supplies last. All right, until next time, happy quilting.